Hello everyone. On this video we will be looking at how to add and subtract positive and negative numbers. Okay. Now if you remember, if you have a positive 5, that's really just the 5, the numbers that we're used to seeing. And if you have the negative sign in front of the 5, really that's just called the opposite of 5, which is opposite of positive 5 is negative 5. And that's just a reminder of what was on the previous video. Okay. Now, if we look at on a number line, you have the negative sign, which will go in the negative direction, which is left, and the positive sign, which will go in the positive direction, which is to the right on the number line. Okay. So, for example, if we apply that to addition, just going to move that up a little bit. All right. Now, what if we wanted to solve 3 plus negative 5 using a number line? All right, so I'm going to solve that. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a number line using my protractor just to keep it a little bit straight. Okay, so we have 0, which is our origin. And we can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4, negative 5, and that keeps on going to infinity, and that keeps on going to negative infinity. Okay, so starting at the origin, we see we have 3 plus negative 5. So if we start at the origin and move to the 3 is positive, so we're going to go to the right. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3 to the right. And make a little mark there. So we have plus a negative 5. Negative 5 goes in the negative direction. So we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we went 3 in the positive direction and 5 in the negative direction. We ended up at negative 2. So 3 plus negative 5 equals negative 2. All right, so let's try another example. What if you wanted to solve negative 3 plus 5 using the number line? Okay, so what I want you to do is go ahead and press pause and try to solve this one on your own. All right, so I'm assuming you've paused it. So let's go ahead and verify. Again, starting at the origin, which is 0. We can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that keeps on going to infinity. Negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4, negative 5, and that goes all the way on to negative infinity. So again, if we start at the origin, since the 3 is negative, we're going to go 3 units to the left. So starting here, 1, 2, 3 units to the left. The 5 is positive, so we're going to go 5 units to the right. So we went 3 units to the left because it's negative, 5 units to the right because it's positive. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we see here it stops at positive 2. So we know that negative 3 plus 5 equals positive 2. And again, you don't have to put the positive in front of the 2. Just the fact that it's 2 lets us know that it's positive. All right. So if you are still writing, of course, feel free to press pause and finish up. But we're going to go ahead and move on to our next page. Which shows that You can use the number line for small values, 3 and 5. But what if you wanted to add negative 58 plus positive 22? That's a pretty big number line. So you can't do that. At least it's not. You can, but if you're taking an exam, that's not very practical. You'll be spending 15 minutes on one problem. You don't want to do that. Okay, so these are the steps for adding two numbers with the same sign, and then we'll show how to add them with different signs. Okay, so if they have the same sign, which means the two numbers are either both positive or both negative, you add their absolute values. Okay, and then second, if both numbers are positive, then their sum will be positive. If both numbers are negative, then their sum will be negative. Okay, so if you add two positive numbers together, your answer is going to be positive. If you add two negative numbers together, your answer is going to be negative. All right. So if you are still writing, of course, feel free to pause it and get all this down. This is important stuff. But we'll go ahead and move on to our next examples. Okay, so what if you wanted to add these values, and of course all of them have the same sign? You have 20 plus 12, negative 20 plus negative 12, 32 plus 15, and negative 32 plus negative 15. Okay, so we'll start with problem A. Okay, we have 20 plus 12. Okay, we see here that both are positive. And you actually don't have to add the absolute value when they're both positive, because the absolute value of 20 is 20 and the absolute value of 12 is 12. So you don't have to add the absolute value in this case. But since they're both positive, we know that your answer is going to be positive. And 20 plus 12 is 32. Positive 32. And again, you don't need the positive sign. It's just there to reinforce that if they're both positive, your answer will be positive. Okay. So for B, if you have negative 20 plus negative 12, we see here that both are negative. Okay. Now the absolute value of 20, I'll do this on the side here. Absolute value of 20, or negative 20, let me clear that up. Is 20, and the absolute value of negative 12 is 12. So if we add those two together, we get 32. But the sign of both of those are negative, so your answer will be negative. So you end up with negative 32. Okay. All you have to do, and honestly, you don't have to do this step. If you know that 20 plus 12 is 32, then negative 20 plus negative 12 is going to be negative 32. Okay. You can do this step if you like. There's nothing wrong with it. But as long as you add them together and make sure that, okay, if I'm adding two negative numbers, that answer is going to be negative. Okay, if I'm adding two positive numbers, that answer is going to be positive. But they're going to end up with the same basic absolute value. Just the signs will be different. Okay, so let's go with problem C. We have 32 plus 15, and with problem D, I'll write that below it. Negative 32 plus negative 15. Uh-oh. Okay, now what I want you to do is go ahead and press pause and solve C and D on your own. right, so I'm assuming you've paused it and solved it. Let's go ahead and verify. So of course, these here are both positive. Okay, and 32 plus 15 is 47. Okay, now see here that both of these are both negative. Now we could do the absolute value steps here, but we don't have to. If we know that 32 plus 15 is 47, then negative 32 plus negative 15 is negative 47. Okay, so it's kind of a quick way to do it, to just add the values together and just make sure you know that if they're both negative, your answer is negative. If they're both positive, your answer is positive. All right. So if you are still writing, of course, feel free to pause it and finish up. But we're going to go ahead and move on to our next page. There we go. Now, we know how to solve them if these signs are the same. Now, these are the steps for adding values with different signs, where one may be positive and one may be negative. Now, for this one, the absolute value step is pretty crucial. So you want to do that, at least until you get comfortable with it. Okay, so you want to subtract the smaller absolute value from the larger absolute value. Okay, that's your first step. Your second step is, once you add them together, once you subtract them, it will have the sign of the larger absolute value. Oh, I'll put sum. And it should be the difference. There you go. Sorry about that. Should be the difference will have the sign of the larger absolute value. All right. So if you're still writing this, feel free to pause it. But we're going to go ahead and jump to our next examples. And again, we're going to have a lot of examples because I want to make sure you get this. Okay, so if we wanted to add the values, knowing that they have different signs. Okay, so if we solve this one, let's say we start with problem A. We have 10 plus negative 15. Okay, so in this case, 15 is the larger absolute value. So we put that on top. The absolute value of negative 15 is 15. And the absolute value of positive 10, let me make that a 1 there, is 10. So we go ahead and subtract it. 15 minus 10 is 5. Okay, so we see here that the largest absolute value is negative. That's the negative 15. So this 5 becomes negative 5. And that's your answer. Okay. Now, if you did that on a number line, you'd go 10 units to the right and 15 units to the left, and you'd land on negative 5. But this way, it's a lot faster. Okay. So for problem B, we have 38 plus negative 2. 38 is our largest absolute value in this one. So you have the absolute value of 38 is just 38. And the absolute value of negative 2 is just 2. So we go ahead and subtract them and we get 36. Now our largest absolute value is positive. So this 36 stays a positive 36. Okay? It only changes to negative if your largest absolute value is negative. In this case, our largest absolute value is positive, so our answer stays positive. All right. So if you are still writing, of course, feel free to pause it and finish up. But we're going to go ahead and move on to some more examples. Okay. So what if we wanted to simplify? You may hear it say, simplify, solve, evaluate. It all means the same thing. Okay. So for A, you have -8 plus -2. You have 10 plus -6. We have a -11 plus -5. We have -85 plus -42. We have -121 plus 170. And we have -765 plus 213. Okay, so what I want you to do is press pause and solve each one of those on your own. Excuse me. All right, so I'm assuming you've paused it and worked it out. So let's go ahead and verify your answer. Okay, so for problem A, you have -8 plus -2. Again, same sign, both negative. So if 8 plus 2 is equal to +10, or +8 plus +2 is equal to +10, then -8 plus -2 is equal to -10. Okay, now for problem B, you have 10 plus a -6. Now they have a different sign, which means you have to do the absolute value steps. So the absolute value of 10 is equal to 10. The absolute value of -6 is equal to 6. So we go ahead and subtract. 10 minus 6 is equal to 4. Okay. Now we see here that our largest absolute value is positive. So that means this 4 just stays as a +4. Okay. Go for problem C. You have -11 plus -5. Okay. Both of them are negative. Okay. So if you had +11 plus +5, we know that would equal +16. So -11 plus -5 is equal to -16. Let me kind of separate those a little bit. Okay, now let's go problem D. -85 plus -42. Again, both are negative. Okay, so we see here, just doing this on the side, that 85 plus 42 is 127. So -85 plus -42 is -127. Okay, go ahead and do problem E. -121 plus 170. You see here that they're different signs. Okay, so we know that 170 is the larger absolute value, so we put that on top. The absolute value of 170, we know that's 170. And the absolute value of -121 is 121. So we go ahead and subtract. Okay, 170 minus 121 is 49. Okay, once again, your largest absolute value is positive. So that 49 stays positive 49. Okay, so hopefully you're starting to kind of see the pattern. And for problem F, we have negative 765 plus 213. Okay, once again, different signs. So we use the absolute value. 765 is the larger absolute value. So the absolute value of negative 765 is 765. And the absolute value of 213 is 213. So we go ahead and subtract them. 765 minus 213 is 552. Okay, now we see here our largest absolute value is negative. So this 552 becomes negative 552. And that would be your answer. All right. So if you are still writing, of course, feel free to press pause. But we're going to go ahead and move on to some more examples. All right. So what if we wanted to add negative 201 plus negative 143 plus negative 101 for problem A, negative 9 plus 2 plus negative 10 plus 3 for problem B, 20 plus negative 15 plus 30 plus negative 18 for problem C, and negative 78 plus negative 42 plus 57 plus 13 for problem D. All right. So what I want you to do is go ahead and pause it and try this one on your own. All right, so I'm assuming you've paused it and worked it out. So let's go ahead and verify. Okay, so for problem A, we have negative 201 plus negative 143 plus negative 101. Okay, so all we have to do, we add these two together. Or you can add those two together, it doesn't matter. Just add two of them together. Okay, so negative 201 plus negative 143 is negative 344. So that's negative 344 plus negative 101. Okay, so negative 344 plus negative 101 is equal to negative 445. Okay, so we'll do problem B. You have negative 9. Let me go ahead and write it. Negative 9 plus 2 plus negative 10 plus 3. Okay. Negative 9 plus 2 is negative 7. So those two is negative 7 plus negative 10 plus 3. So now we can add these two together. We can add these two together. Doesn't matter. Actually, what you could have done, which I'll do that because it'll be a lot faster, is instead of doing it that way, you add those two together and you add these two together. So negative 10 plus 3 is also negative 7. So we end up with negative 7 plus negative 7, which is negative 14. That way's a little faster. So problem C, we see that we have 20 plus negative 15 plus 30 plus negative 18. Okay, so we go ahead and we add those two together. And just to keep it simple, we'll add those two together. Okay, so 20 plus negative 15 is positive 5. Okay. Plus 30 plus negative 18 is positive 12. Okay. So positive 5 plus positive 12 is equal to positive 17. And problem D, you have negative 78 plus negative 42 plus 57 plus 13. So we go ahead and work that out right here on the side. So we know that 78 plus 42 is 120. So these two give you negative 120. Let me move that up a little. And we know that 57 plus 13 is 70. So negative 120 plus those two added together gives us 70. Okay, so we add these two together, we have different signs. So of course we have to use the different signs. So the absolute value, we move that out the way, of negative 120 is 120. And the absolute value of 70 is 70. So we go ahead and subtract those. And we end up with 50. But since the largest absolute value is negative, that ends up being negative 50. All right. So once again, if you're still writing, feel free to pause it and finish up. But we're going to go ahead and move on to the next one, which is subtracting positive and negative numbers. Okay. Now, to do that, we have to look at what we call the definition of subtraction. Okay. And really, subtracting a number is the same thing as adding its opposite. So, in general, just for some number that we'll call A and another number we'll call B, A minus B is the same as saying A plus negative B. Just adding the opposite of B. And A minus negative B is the same as saying A plus the opposite of negative B, which is positive B. So A plus B. Okay, so here are the steps for actually subtracting positive and negative values. And again, as you practice, you'll get a lot faster at it. You'll get a lot better and you won't have to go through all of the steps. Okay, so first step is using the definition of subtraction, which are these two up here. Change all minus signs to plus signs. And that's if you have like multiple terms, more than two. So if you have like 3 or 4 terms you're adding together, it's usually easier to change them to plus signs. And then after you're done, you want to use the steps for adding positive and negative numbers that we just did. All right. So if you're still writing this, again, very important, so I'd write it down. If you're still writing it, feel free to press pause and finish up. But we're going to go ahead and jump to our next couple of examples. Okay, so what if we wanted to subtract these using the definition of subtraction? And I know 5 minus 3 is something you can do in your head, but we want to kind of reiterate the actual process of the definition. Okay, so you have 5 minus 3, and you have negative 5 minus positive 3. Okay, so for this one, using the definition, we have 5 minus 3. Okay, but we're going to rewrite that as 5 plus negative 3. Change the sign to plus, and change the minus to plus, and change the sign of the value on the immediate right. So that becomes plus, this becomes negative. So you have 5 plus negative 3, which ends up being positive 2. Okay. And for problem B, you have negative 5 plus 3. Oh, negative 5 minus 3. Sorry about that, I'm jumping ahead. Negative 5 minus 3, which becomes negative 5 plus, and that minus 3 becomes plus negative 3, which is negative 8. All right. So hopefully you kind of see how we use the definition on both of those. Excuse me. Okay. So if you're still writing, feel free to pause it and finish up. But we're going to go ahead and move on to some more examples. Okay, so what if we wanted to subtract using any method you like? You can use regular algebra, you can use the subtraction definition, whatever method you like. Okay, so subtract using the appropriate method. So what I want you to do is go ahead and pause it and try those on your own. Okay, so hopefully you have paused it and worked it out. So let's go ahead and verify. And yes, I just realized I used that on the previous example. So I kind of wanted to switch those up to give you an idea. But yeah, you already got that answer. Okay, so 7 minus 5. You can make that 7 plus negative 5, but you don't have to. We already know 7 minus 5 is 2. And like I said, either method works. Both will give you 2. Now 5 minus 7, we know that's 5 plus negative 7, which is negative 2. So we circle those answers. Okay, same with problem C. 8 minus 6, we know 8 minus 6 is 2. Or you can write it as 8 plus negative 6. Either way, you'll get 2. Now for problem D, negative 3 minus 5, it's a little easier to rewrite it. So you have negative 3, that minus 5 becomes plus negative 5. Which is negative 8. And for problem E, negative 5 minus 3 gives you negative 5. That minus 3 becomes plus negative 3, which again is negative 8. All right. So if you are still writing, feel free to press pause, but we're going to go ahead and jump to some more examples. Again, doing a lot of examples. Want to make sure you got it. This is very important stuff moving forward. Okay, so what if you wanted to subtract negative 4 minus negative 7, negative 10 minus negative 3, negative 3 minus negative 10, and negative 35 minus negative 14. Okay, so again, go ahead and press pause and solve these on your own. All right, I'm assuming you've paused it and worked it out. So let's go ahead and once again verify. Okay, so negative 4 minus negative 7, problem A. You're going to rewrite that as negative 4 instead of minus negative 7. It's going to be plus, then you're going to change the sign. So plus positive 7, or just 7, which is equal to positive 3. Remember, when you change the minus to plus, change the minus to plus, and then whatever the sign is to the immediate right. So if you change this minus to plus, and it's a negative here, you're going to change it to positive. If you change this minus to plus, and the next number is positive, you're going to change that next number to negative. Okay, so you only change the number to the immediate right of the minus sign once you change it. So for B, negative 10, minus negative 3. I was about to jump ahead a little bit. You're going to rewrite that as negative 10 plus, instead of minus negative 3, that plus is going to change to positive, and then you're going to change that negative to positive. So plus 3, which is negative 7. So for C, negative 3 minus negative 10, you write down the first value, that minus changes to plus, and to the immediate right, that negative 10 will change to positive 10, which is going to equal positive 7. And negative 35 minus negative 14, that's going to become negative 35. That minus changes to plus, and the sign changes to the immediate right. So that minus negative becomes plus positive 14, which is negative 21. All right. So once again, if you're still writing, feel free to pause it. But we're going to go ahead and move on to our last set of examples. And this one, we're going to kind of mix it up a little bit. We have more than just 2 terms. Okay, so what I want you to do is press pause once again and try these on your own. All right, so I'm assuming you've paused it and worked it out. So let's go ahead and verify. So for problem A, we have 44 minus negative 11 plus 55. Okay, so we're going to change all of those minuses to pluses. So that becomes 44 plus, then we change the sign of whatever's to the immediate right. So if that's negative 11, that becomes positive 11 plus 55. Remember, that minus only applies to what's at the immediate right. It doesn't apply to terms after that. Okay, so we have 44 plus 11 plus 55. Okay, so 44 plus 11, we add those two together, we get 55. So 55 plus 55 equals 110. All right, so let's move on up to problem B. We have negative 300 plus 600 minus negative 200. We want to get rid of that minus sign. So we have negative 300 plus 600 minus, and we change the sign of what's to the immediate right. So that negative 200, that becomes plus positive 200. Okay, remember, we change the sign from minus to plus, then we change the sign of whatever's to the immediate right. Okay, so if we go ahead and add these two together, negative 300 plus 600 is positive 300. So these two together gives us positive 300 plus, this is just 200 here, 200, which gives us 500. All right, so now for problem C, let me go ahead and separate those, avoid any confusion. We want to subtract -4 from the sum of -8 and 12. Okay. Now this one is probably going to be a little confusing just because of the way it's worded. Okay, but think about it this way, and this is what I always suggest. If you have 7 minus 4, what you did here was you subtract 4 from 7. Okay. Now on this one, what we're going to do is we're going to subtract -4 from the sum of -8 and 12. Okay, so what this gives us is -8 plus 12. That's the sum of -8 plus 12. And we're going to subtract -4 from that. So minus -4. Okay, so what does that give us? Well, that gives us -8 plus 12 minus -4. So that minus, I'll leave it as minus -4, and then I'll change it after. Okay, so that gives us -8 plus 12 minus, you're going to change that to plus, and then change that sign. So instead of -4, be +4. Okay, and we can leave the parentheses there if we want to. Okay, so -8 plus 12 is +4. So 4 plus this 4 here, which gives us an answer of 8. All right, so that's how you add and subtract positive and negative integers. Again, the same process for positive and negative fractions, same process for positive and negative decimals, same rules apply. Okay, so you can use this process for all of them. Okay, so hopefully this made sense and all the extra examples help, and I will see you on the next video.